All right, everybody, welcome to another Author Marketing Club Masterclass. We have a very special presentation to you today from an expert named Amar Deshpande. Hope I said that right, Amar. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did, Jim. Thank you.
So Amar is here because there is a huge thing happening in the world. If you are an author or you're thinking about being an author, the India market, it is growing, and there is a huge opportunity for authors to get into this market. The problem is, of course, you probably don't know what you need to do, how to publish, where to publish, what's the potential, all of those things. And we have Amar on today to give this masterclass and talk about this story of publishing and marketing your books in India, because as I mentioned, this is extremely important. And as you will see today, this is something that every author should be considering doing. So we've brought the expert in here, Amar, and what I'm going to do is just give it to you and have you take it away. And if I have any questions, I'll jump in. So take it away, Amar.
Well, first of all, thank you once again, Jim. Really appreciate this opportunity. And for the listeners who would be tuning in, to take a look at what I'm about to present. But before that, a little bit of a backstory. 14 months ago, I was about to launch My Kitab podcast, and I'll be talking about it in a few minutes. But I was not really sure how to structure this particular podcast. So I reached out to Jim. We connected, and in about, I think, less than 10 minutes, the advice and the perspectives that Jim offered on how to structure My Kitab podcast was really helpful. And nearly an year later, we've 5 amazing interviews with authors, entrepreneurs, publishers, both from India and international. And we will be celebrating our 1-year anniversary next week. So once again, thank you, Jim. I really, really appreciate all the sage advice that you offered last year.
Well, thank you, and I'm always willing to help people out, and you're returning the favor now by coming in and helping my authors learn about the India market. So let's hear about it. I'm excited.
Excellent. So what I'm going to be talking about is essentially 2 parts of the whole book publishing journey. And I'm sure most of the viewers or the listeners would be already familiar about it. And first is how to publish the book. And secondly, I think the more interesting and the exciting book publishing journey, and that's book marketing. A little bit about myself. So that's, when I was actually trying to title this slide, I was actually watching a movie of Jack, the same name. So I just bought here. So I'm the host of My Kitab podcast. My name is Amar Deshpande. Amar Vyas is my author pen name. So I host My Kitab podcast using my author pen name. I'm also the creator of Balgatha podcast. So these are kids' bedtime stories. And last month, December, we hit 30,000 unique downloads, and it's all organic traffic in the past 6 months. And that's another very interesting project that I'm also involved with my wife. I'm the author of Amol Dixit series. So it started, my debut novel started as a semi-biographical fiction kind of a book. At the end of it, I thought, something's not right. There is decided to do a 4-part series. So that's what I write whenever I have time. I'm an entrepreneur now, so I think finally after 1 year, I can call myself one. So till December 2015, I was working in corporate career and working with Amazon, setting up their warehouse infrastructure here in India. And I used to head that program. And before that, I had a few other exciting roles with Schneider Electric, Jones Lang LaSalle, worked in real estate. And I have an MBA from Ahmedabad and a master's from University of Illinois. And I worked in the United States for about 6 years before moving back to India. And if you are in Chicago area, one of the Target stores that you ever visit just might have been built by yours truly, or maybe 1 or 2 car dealerships in Ohio. A little bit about myself. Why did I actually end up launching My Kitab podcast? Well, Jim mentioned that there's a lot we don't really know about the Indian market, how to go about it, how to go about publishing. Believe it or not, 3 years ago, I was exactly in the same situation. The first draft of my debut novel was ready, and my wife and I used to debate virtually every day for nearly a month that should we traditionally publish, should we look at alternatives. I actually was very keen on making it sort of a niche sort of a book, because it was catering to a specific demographic, the diaspora from India, the expats who come back to India. So in the process, spending about 200 hours between my wife and I researching the whole book publishing and marketing, book marketing opportunities in India. And just a quick math, and I'm sure familiar, 200 hours is practically the amount of time required to write about 5 novels or 8 novellas. So amount of time we spent, and no other author should really have, because they should spend more time writing and then just quickly learn one about the publishing and the book marketing aspect. So that's how My Kitab podcast came into being. My Kitab, the Kitab Hindi and many other Indian languages I'm going to be talking about today is based on the lot of research that we've done and the information provided by a lot of very accomplished guests on My Kitab podcast. Let me quickly jump to the first part, and that is the book publishing market in India. Now, some of you may have seen these, and they have been they have been in the news. There's been a lot of talk around this, either on publishing perspectives or a lot of other book publishing related journals and blogs. So, $1 billion market at least it was in 2015. Well, the fact is, for fiction and non-fiction, it's actually a $400 million market. 90% of this 4 billion goes towards textbooks and academic publishing. So just to a quick reality check, 400 million by no means is a small market, but it's definitely not a gigantic market like 4 billion. It should be. There are about 19,000 publishers, out of which about 9,000 are active, and by active they definitely at least one book in the previous 12 months. 90,000 titles per year. So out of the active publishers, I think they publish anywhere between 8 and 10 books every year. Now, the majority of books that are published in India are without ISBN. What it means essentially is that it's extremely difficult to find the data on sales of books, number one. Number two, obviously, how much money is every publisher making? And more importantly, as an author, if you get a royalty check, there is no way of cross-examining or verifying whether the number of sales claimed by the publishers are true, or these are just numbers which are either best guess, or they just try to that's not really reflecting the true amount of sales. And I'm not saying that publishers are unscrupulous. Well, some of them are, but just because of the amount of chaos that exists in the whole book, the print book distribution market, it's very difficult to get quality data. Now, also to understand, and this is really the Indian book publishing market, it's one country, but it's multiple. As a result, we have multiple languages here. If you just go from north to south, we have Hindi, which is the largest language spoken by nearly 425 million people. And then, you just practically go through every state and you have, in certain cases, 70 or 80 million people speaking a particular language. Particularly in the languages of South, that will be Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, higher literacy levels, and people do take a very active interest in reading, be it digitally, which is very exciting, or even in terms of print books. And just as a comparison, if you look at some of the European countries, the European markets, so Bengali, there are more Bengali speakers than the entire population of Germany. And more people who speak either Marathi or Telugu than the entire population of France. So the numbers are huge opportunity, but I will again come in a few minutes as to what this opportunity really means for you. So when you're looking at the Indian market, do look at English, of course, and that's a no-brainer. But more importantly, for your specific genre, or if there are any specific reasons that you want to look at a particular language, do bear in mind that Hindi, Telugu, an extent Marathi. Those are the four languages where you should really keep an eye on. And particularly Hindi and Marathi, it's practically the same script. So if you're getting your book translated into one language, do consider the other one as well. Certain trends. This is a lot of this is the research that I've done over the past 3 years, largely tracking the sales trends on Amazon India, and then of course Flipkart, which is the other large print book seller. There are certain genres that do well. Non-fiction. In non-fiction, English language learning is huge. It's really huge. And so you would see at least 2 to 3 books in the top 10 or top 20 overall book sales any given time of the year would be either on English grammar, it could be on how to write, how to communicate in English. Study preparation guides is another big market, considering that about 40% of the student population tends to buy online. So it's definitely very, very interesting. Self-help and motivation is doing really, really well. So if any of you authors write in these genres, do consider the Indian market very strongly. And same goes for fiction. Romance is big, of course, and mythology. So mythology, largely derivatives of either Ramayana or Mahabharata or Bhagavad Gita. Have your own interpretation on that. This was a massive, massive sort of genre that was largely created because one or two authors, Amish Tripathi, who ended up selling about 2.5 to 3 million titles, copies of his book, and a couple of other authors. So they kind of, really created this genre. A lot of other authors followed. It's waning down now. You really get some very good sales numbers. There are trends as well in terms of timelines. January to May, you would see more non-fiction titles, largely because May and June, or April to June, is when you have a lot of competitive exams. So either for engineering or the public services or the armed forces and things like that. So students tend to buy these books online more. And that's why non-fiction as a genre does really well, particularly study guides. June and July are typically transition months. You would see a bit of, again, self-help, spirituality, those kind of books doing well. August to December is really when fiction dominates. In fact, and I will talk a little bit about the Bollywood and the Hollywood model, but typically there are 4 or 5 superstar authors who would tend to release their books practically 1 month after the other. So these are some of the trends that I have been observing, and this has been validated by quite a few experts who have been, or professionals who have been working in this industry for about. And so this is great that whatever trends that we can pick up and actually pass on that information to authors, then they can accordingly plan their marketing activities and their publishing timelines in India. I would like to talk a little bit about how much does it cost to translate, and this is important because, like I said before, that if you're talking about India, don't look at just one market, but it's a very diverse market. So typically, if you have, and this is an Excel worksheet that I have prepared, and I would be sending the sheet across to Jim after the presentation. So those of you who are interested in working out your own numbers, running your own, can also go ahead and do that. So basically, the premise is this: that if you have about 100,000 word book, it is going to cost you about between to 2,200 thereabout dollars to get your book translated and edited. Add to that the cost of formatting, the layout, of course, and then cover design. So it works out to anywhere between 2,300 to 2,500 for the first language. But the moment you do it in a related language, which has either a similar script or similar words, and that's another beauty about India, typically adjoining states have a lot of similarity either in the script or the words that they use. So maybe, if you get two books translated, it's not going to cost you double. So, if it's 2,300 for one book, it's not going to be $4,600. It may be closer to $3,800. But still a good chunk of change that you would have to invest if you're looking at very specific targeting for your books. On to the second part, which is about book marketing. Jim, if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Go back to that slide you just had there. I want people to make sure they understand
the cost.
The number of words in your book. You have the apostrophe or the comma in the wrong spot, and it looks like 1 million. I want to make sure.
No, that's the way numbers are represented in India, Jim. Just the way in Europe you have a period instead of a comma.
Right. So I just want to make sure people who are watching this in the US understand that that's a 100,000 word book. So for example, my book that I published with Wiley and Sons about 7 years ago was 68,000 words. And so that would have cost me less than $2,000 to get that translated over, and then of course the formatting and the cover design, and most people could do that as well. Now what's really interesting to me about this is, how do I decide, and maybe you're going to talk about this, how do I decide which market to publish to? Should I just go for the Hindi market, which is the biggest, or is it going to be by genre? Or, I don't know which one to start with first.
That's an excellent question, Jim. And yes, I would be talking about that in one of the subsequent slides. But
good, you have that answered for me. So that's the only question I have there.
Okay, great. And thanks for mentioning about the commas, right where it says 100,000. It did not occur to me. And, the sheet that I send you across, I'll make sure that the numbers are reflected the way they are read in the US.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to the art of book marketing. About here, some of these concepts are unique to India, or they are so new that there are very few references or data points available with us right now to actually present as case studies, and some of them are anecdotal. So having said that, what I'm going to mention about the book marketing, there is a 2-page sheet that I put together with references, which would be included with this presentation as well. I have included the links for that over there. Let's talk about the publishing of the book, even though now we are talking marketing, but understand that India largely is print. Of course, ebooks are also there, probably in terms of the market share. So do have, and audiobooks are virtually non-existent. Hopefully, over the next year, once Audible starts really themselves actively in India, that scenario will change. But largely, if you're looking at India, have a 2-part strategy about your sales. Look at them in or 80%, and the remainder by print. For print is that if you're going to have local bloggers or book reviewers from India, more often than not expect a print copy. So, as a part of your marketing strategy, in terms of your costing, your budgeting, etc., do bear that in mind. So for print on demand, there is a great space, or lulu.com or other resources. We don't have like pure play demand. So Cinnamon Teal and Pothi are 2 of the more reputed ones, and a lot of questionable, veering towards a type of shade players in the market as well. But having spoken to a lot of authors, independent authors here in India, and I have personally interviewed both the co-founders of Pothi and Cinnamon Teal for my Kitab podcast. I've met them in person amount of time. That's what I meant. And take it from me, I don't get anything out of them for a cup of coffee, and it costs me more in paying for fuel to visit them rather than what I can get out of that cup of coffee. But more importantly, these are the go-to people. They can really help you with the formatting, with the printing, the distribution, etc., etc. And Pothi.com actually has a on their website, which again I have used, which tells you that what would be the cost of printing, let's say 200 copies, if you want to give it out to the here, the book reviewers, etc., or have some in select stores. And Cinnamon Deal also offers similar kind of services. Now let's speak about ebooks, which is again the bigger, more exciting opportunity there. So Amazon remember, so last month. Now ebooks are available in 6 languages in India, including English. The site called another app called Daily Hunt, which offers ebooks in 12 languages. Another one called Matru Bharti, which largely is for Hindi and Gujarati, 2 languages. But like I said before, if you're doing Hindi in Marathi, so by extension, Matru Bharti, if you like languages, that they are the ones to go to. And again, Ravanan from Daily Hunt and Matru Bharti as well. I met both these people. I've interviewed them, and Mahendra Sharma from Matru Bharti. Really passionate about books. Really want to see the mixture of how can the whole writing process be made well. Great people to really even to brainstorm and just see what else is out there. Another exciting opportunity happening in India is app-based book distribution opportunities. So there is an app called Juggernaut. So essentially, there's a lady called Chiki Sarkar. So she was the CEO of Penguin Random House India. She quit in I think early December 2015. Raised about $2 million in funding. And they went ahead and developed an app wherein the idea is that they would have very select books which should be distributed through app. Once there is enough demand, at the back end, I think they have a tie-up with Hachette. So they would take care of the publishing, the printing, distribution, etc. So this is again an exciting opportunity that's arising in India, starting with English, and very soon you may see incarnations of this. Now, coming to marketing strategies, 5 strategies that I would like to talk about. And there are, of course, many more. And this is what I meant, that some of these are very new. Some of these are either anecdotal. As and when I get data, I would be more than happy to share that across. But right now, this is what I think are the best bets or the approaches that you can take. So first is leveraging the startups. Second is the Hollywood model. And Jim, I think the question that you had asked, what language should you publish in? The answer kind of lies in this particular approach as well. Third is James Patterson model. Fourth is WhatsApp list. And fifth is a hybrid of fifth is a hybrid of Wattpad and Sweek. First and foremost, leverage the startups. The startup scene in India and particularly Bangalore, it's extremely exciting. So you have a lot of people trying to solve problems that plague the book publishing industry. A lot of people, either engineers or MBAs or people from the financial or marketing background, they're trying to do a lot of 2 in particular that I would like to talk about is Shabdanagari and ShareChat. So their interfaces are going to be in Indian languages. So typically, if you want to these markets or these ideas, you may have to look for someone who knows these two, who knows definitely the Hindi language, the Devanagari script, that's what it's called. And that person can be based in the country or the city that you are in. They need not be in India. It's just opportunity that's opened up, particularly with Shabdanagari. They positioned themselves early on, and when I say early on, it's like early December 15. They positioned themselves as Facebook in Hindi. And exactly a year later, now they're positioning themselves as the largest marketplace of Hindi language books. So they have an established base of around 3.5 to 4 million members at this point in time. So this is a great opportunity to go ahead and start talking, interacting with the people there. Of course, a lot of book lovers were there, a lot of people who know English, but they prefer to read in Hindi. So that's a great way to, in a very targeted way, reach out to them. ShareChat is a bit like WhatsApp, but in Hindi. You would see a lot of jokes, a typical evolution of a social media channel in India. It will start with a lot of noise, but eventually things will settle down into specific groups or genres, wherein from there you can start targeting. So for the podcast for kids stories, Balgatha, we use Share Chat to promote the kids stories. So they have like a kids sub channel within them. Think a little bit like, a Facebook group, and we go ahead and start promoting individual episode of the podcast over there, and we are seeing some good traffic from there. Is one approach that I thought that that authors should really look at. But like I said, the caveat, you would need somebody who knows Hindi or the Devanagari script to help you out with that.
Amar, let me ask you a question about that. So let's say I wanted to pursue that. Are there people, I don't know if you do this, or are there people I can hire in the market to help me get this done, or like book publicist or promotion specialists, or is this something that you do? I mean, how do I get past this barrier if I'm somebody who really wants to try this and I don't know the Hindi language?
Sure. Jim, that's a great question. So no, we don't do it. Again, I probably should have mentioned it up front that, everything that I'm recommending, these are just learnings, and, I do it myself as an author. We don't offer it as a service. But there are 2 or 3 groups which have a massive, Facebook groups, which have like 15 or 16,000 authors, mostly from India. One such group is For Writers by Authors. So, one could actually go out there. I think every Friday is a promotion day or something like that. And I will send the relevant, details. You can actually go ahead and have a call there for people to help you out. And
okay, so there's an opportunity for
yes,
to figure this out. It's just, I'm watching this, and this is all amazing stuff. The thing that, if I'm a U.S. author and I'm watching this, I'm like, wow, the barriers to entry for me to figure this all out seems like it's a lot. And I just kind of looking for some tips for authors. So as you continue through, just, if you have any ideas for authors to get through those barriers, that's great.
Absolutely. And thanks for pointing that out. In fact, the other thing is, it is actually quite, if these are going to be like short 2-3 sentence messages, the synopsis of the book, or like the punchline that you really want to drive traffic back to either your author website or your Amazon site, you can use Google Translate. And just have somebody, who knows, again, the script and the language, work with you on that. And, it actually makes the process very easy. And again, on this group For Writers by Authors, there are a lot of authors who can actually help you out. And again, one of the approaches that I would be talking in the following slide could actually be a great way of collaborating with authors here in India.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so moving on to what I call as the Hollywood model, and I'm sorry, the artwork on this screenshot was so great. I actually wanted to highlight the 4 languages that they have. There is like a little a pink or a red band that I have around right in the middle of the artwork, the graphic there. What it essentially says is that one Bollywood movie, a Hollywood movie, Assassin's Creed in this case, has been released in 4 languages at the same time, and those are English, Hindi, Tamil, and Telugu. And Jim, going back to your question, these are the 4 languages in which, actually, if you exclude English, these are the 3 languages in which you definitely need to look at when you're talking about publishing in Indian languages. And I would just add a little bit, if you're publishing in Hindi, do consider Marathi. So no matter what genre it is, you would find massive readerships in this. And in fact, Hollywood producers and a lot of strategists and marketers spent a large number of years trying to study the Indian, the content consumption market, and it's not necessarily restricted to films. And what they realized is that these 4 languages really matter in India. A lot of films, they are published in multiple languages simultaneously. Again, if an author has a budget of around $7,000 or $8,000, including your marketing spend, just go ahead and publish your books in all 4 languages. The marketing effort would become much easier, it's. You may find somebody or the other. In fact, you may find a lot of your readers who are in the United States, but they speak these languages, and that's the great way of connecting with them. Now, the James Patterson model, the exciting. The idea is very simple. Co-author your book with an Indian author from a similar genre. He is an Indian author. who actually is an has comes from a family of industry, very smart guy, but he is more active now as an author than an entrepreneur or businessman. He writes in a similar genre. As in, the two of them collaborated. This book, Private India, did really well. Of course, this comes from a traditional publisher, but the point is that it proved to the Indian market, both the authors, the publishers, and the readers alike, that such a collaboration works really, really well. And in fact, I doing a sequel, but I think they're looking at a three just with this around this theme. So again, if who are outside of India, they were to find collaborators who write in a similar genre, either through their For Writers by Authors group, and I'm not promoting that particular group, but just a suggestion, because I'm an active member in that group as well. You can find a collaborator there. You could jointly work out a marketing strategy. You can, in fact, maybe even split the costs, because at the end of the day, you would also be splitting your revenue in some way or the other. So this is one approach that I would very, very strongly recommend that you should take a look at.
So I love this idea. The question I have about that idea, if you go back to that slide, is that author Ashwin Sanghi, is that a well-known author there, or is that just somebody who hitched a ride on James Patterson? What should I be looking for? Should I be looking for an author who writes in a similar genre and approach them and say, let's write a book together? Or should I say, I have a book that I already wrote and I want you to kind of add to it and we'll release it in Hindi? What's the approach there?
So I think there are 2 or 3 different approaches that could work here. So first, to answer your question, Jim, Ashwin Sanghi is probably an A-list author in India. He's probably sold north of 1.5 million books.
So the answer to the response to that question is, what does he need James Patterson for then?
He needed James Patterson probably to get international exposure.
I see.
Right.
So they're both as helping each other. So I get it. Okay.
Yeah. Similarly, James Patterson was not very popular in India, and maybe it's a good time to talk about what I was going to talk subsequently. But let me bring that up here. Authors like Jeffrey Archer, Ken Follett, Robert Ludlum, their books have been in the top 20 or the top 50 bestseller lists for decades now in India. In fact, when I was in college, and maybe I'm giving away my age, but that's fine, I'm nearing 40, about 20 or 25 years ago, when I was either in high school or in college, I used to read their books to see that the readers are still reading. People who are between 18 and 25 now are still reading those books. Right. So it's very difficult for, if you're not an established author already, international author already, it's very difficult for you to find a foothold in the Indian market and then grow. So collaboration from that point of view makes a lot of sense. Now, what is in it for the Indian, the Indian collaborator, the counterpart? Again, to answer your question, Jim, there are 2 approaches that they could do. They could either Indianize certain content relevant to the audience. So maybe they change the setting, a little bit of the character names of the characters, etc. But more importantly, they could really, really help you with the marketing efforts in India.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on to the final strategy, and I'm just combining multiple of them right now, but these are all through social media largely. WhatsApp is a great building a readership in India. So India may not read the email, so an email list difficult to build one, and we are seeing that for the past year that we have been in business. But WhatsApp works really, really well. And in fact, my good friend and Ritesh Kala has written a great article on the Alliance for Independent Authors website on how to use WhatsApp, particularly for indie authors, how they can use it for their book marketing. Again, I'll include the link to that in the references. Essentially, the idea is that start giving away maybe like a chapter or a little bit of a teaser, your cover reveal and things like that, and use those as a lead generator, sort of, drive traffic, have people share their phone numbers, and slowly, from that group becomes your beta readers. Very similar approach to what you would do with email list building. And of course, a lot of you are already practicing that, so I'm not going to speak more on that. But think of WhatsApp as exactly the Indian parallel for your email list. Wattpad is another great site. Even I was surprised when I looked at when I started exploring the market, and I realized, particularly for romance and particularly for it's not young adult per se. I think it's 18 plus, so certainly adult. Depending on what legal definition you're looking at. If you see that, about 17 or 18% of readership for WhatsApp comes from India. So it's a great way, again, have a short story, a novel or something like that. Just get it out there, build the readership there, use that eventually to start driving traffic once you decide to publish in India. Now, these are again long-term approaches, so to speak, and so is with Sweek. So Sweek is a very interesting app-based, again, just like Juggernaut, app-based story sharing site that I recently came across. I think it was through Product Hunt or something like that. So they're a startup based out of Netherlands. But the interesting thing they are doing is that they really want to build their presence in India. So they are organizing a lot of story writing competitions. And in fact, Sabine, who's one of the co-founders and head of marketing, wrote to me yesterday that they're running a competition now, which will go on till February 9th. And they've received hundreds, if not thousands, of entries already, like within less than a week or something like that of launching. So, with one of these startups, again, who really are interested in building up their business in India, I think you as an author would also benefit, because they are going to promote your content out, as much as you would do yourself. With strategic, it could be a little bit time bound. Of course, if Sweek grows to the size of maybe 10 times as big as they are right now, they may not follow the same approach. But I'm sure there'll be somebody else who would replicate what Sweek has done. So there will be somebody or the other coming in. This was probably more of an as an example or a placeholder than me specifically recommending Sweek. Here is the other part of that worksheet that if it was around $2,300 to get your book translated for and ready. I've not included the cost of marketing, because a lot of these costs, I don't have enough data. And so your guess in that would be as good as mine. But if I purely look at it from, if it costs you $2,300 to get your book translated, formatted, and have the cover design in place, how much should you sell your books for, and how many books should you sell to break even? Is the selling price of the book, the price per page. That's the research that I have done for over 3 years now, and I've been tracking these trends almost every 15 days or so. The numbers that I'm talking about, these are like ballpark numbers, irrespective of whether you're writing fiction or non-fiction. So it will be like 1 cent per page if you're looking at an ebook, and about 2 cents per page, so almost nearly double of that if you're looking at a print. Now, you may ask that, what do you mean by per page in ebook? The pages don't really matter in ebook. But the logic here is that if you were to print that ebook into a paperback or a hardcover, so Amazon does give the approximate page length for Kindle ebooks. So that's the logic that I have used over here. So typically, going back to the same example of that, that nearly book or something like that you have written, or 350 pages for the same 100,000 words, the book will sell for about 210 rupees, or about $3.13. And out of which, if it is an ebook, you get about 70% royalty, which is standard for Kindle. And I think a lot of the newer players are also following the Amazon model. They want to maintain that parity in terms of author royalties. For print, the royalties are going to be very low. In fact, you may lose money if you're really looking at very low numbers of print books. And trust me, I've lost money. I've lost a lot of money by focusing on print. And I think that could be a separate conversation. But again, the idea is that out of your $6.27, which it'll take you for your paperback, this is, again, very high for India. But this is probably among the cheapest rate that you would get if you're selling it, whether through Amazon or Flipkart or any other site. So this includes the built-in retailer margins and everything else, of course, and free shipping in more or less all cases. So what's the income earned? You would need to sell around 1,100 books, and 13 cents, to really make your money. Now, 1,100 books may not be a lot of books, or it could be like really a humongous task. right? Depending on how you view the situation. And that's why you will have to try out multiple marketing approaches, either, and this level total number of books sold across all your languages, right? Even though you may have invested a lot more. So, are there authors who have made money by following this approach, by translating and selling books in India? Answer is yes. So, and Anna Erishkigal, she's an independent author from Massachusetts. She's been a recent guest on My Kitab podcast. She has been translating books into Hindi and selling them. In fact, she has sold more books in Hindi than others have.
Mm-hmm. So this selling price of $3.13 is a recommendation, or is that just an example of what it would take you? I guess what I'm trying to get for is, what is the typical selling price for an ebook and a print book that people are willing to pay?
Sure. So I would like to put a clarification as well. Yes, this is a recommendation, but this is based on data, right? This is based on about 2,000 books, the selling price of 2,000 books. And most of these books have featured in the top 50 list of either Flipkart or Amazon, right? Having said that, there is a very, very, disturbing trend going on in India right now of discounting books. Be 25, 75 for, backlist books. It could be as high as 80%. So this is the MRP, or the manufacturer, the retail price. So this is the recommended price. Now, whether your selling price is lower than that by offering a discount, that will totally depend. But my recommendation is, don't get into the discounting game, because you have a lot of large established players who probably have deeper pockets than you. So if you were to discount it by 15%, they would discount their similar price book by 20%. You're not going to win on the discounting part. What you will win is by pricing it fairly, not offering it at a discount, but investing more in finding that right reader.
Yeah, that works for me. Thank you.
All right. So 1,100 books priced at $3 is your simple break-even point. And that's the way it works. If you write smaller, books with lesser word count, let's say around 60,000 words, what I think similar to what Jim had also mentioned, the numbers are going to be lower. I think it's not going to be half of that, just because of the pricing and a lot of other things. You may have to sell 800 books to make your recover your investment. Of course, don't forget to add taxes and everything else that goes with it. So it could be a little bit higher than that. But this should give you an idea that it's not a very difficult problem to solve.
Let me ask you a question about word in books. So, is there a preference for the India market in length of books? Do they want something that's over 50,000 words? Do they like shorter books? What's the trend there?
Oh, that's a great question too, Jim. The trend is on either end of the extreme. There is a minority, though, probably around a fifth of the readership, who want like 300 plus pages. Majority of the books, particularly in the youth and the romance genre, they prefer around 200 words. But in terms of word count, this is another trend that at least a lot of traditional publishers are doing. You increase the font size, you increase the width between the spacing between sentences. So your 200-page book could actually be only around 40, right? And you price it very, very cheap. It will be like $1.50, and then you offer a discount. So it's essentially costs the buyer something around $1 or $1.10. So that's the other end of the extreme, and that's what I was talking about when I said that don't bring your price your book lower, because there are players who are really kind of fudging a lot of things around and probably doing things that may be questionable, but they're really playing the price game.
But just I just want to be clear on this. So in general, if I release a 40,000 word book, is the audience going to be okay with that, or is it just based upon price? Or I'm trying to get an idea of what the expectation is for the Indian market. Do they want a longer books, or do they want shorter books, or is it just based on genre?
Yes, it will depend on the genre. People are okay reading 300 plus pages, so 60,000 and higher books as well. But if it is romance and, again, like I mentioned before, if it's catered largely to the under 25 generation, primary readership, they would prefer shorter books.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, summarize. I really wanted to give 3 reasons why you should consider the Indian market, but I want to actually say 3 reasons why you should not consider the Indian market. Specifically because we had a good discussion around the pricing aspect, low return on investment. In terms of timeline to sell the same 800 or 1100 books, it could be years for your first book. So, you're going to be there for, in the market, actively promoting remotely, or, if you do plan to come to India, do come between the months of November and February, by the way. Great. Anyway, it's going to be a low return on investment for you. In mind, print books dominate, and that's really going to be the trend, at least for the next 4 to 5 years. The market is very complex. By complexity, it's there are no distinct patterns in terms of readership or genre, but more importantly, different languages, different publishers are using different formula for and also for payment. So some may pay you quarterly, others may actually go ahead and pay you annually. Now, if you're sold books, you are outside of India, so the whole foreign exchange and everything. So it is complex. Okay, so there are reasons enough not to look at the market. And of course, this is another data point that I wanted to give. Kindle Unlimited in India plan start at 150 rupees. So a rupee in about 68 Indian rupees is about a US dollar, right? So it's a little more than $2.20. Amazon makes out of that, right? Imagine what authors would be making out of that. Prices of most print books is between $2 and $3, and this is before discount. So again, in a similar range between 150 to about 200 rupees is what a book costs, and is a selling price of a book. Now you take out the retailer discount, the publisher discount, author would typically make anywhere between 7 to 10% in royalty. Unless you're an A-list author, then you may make 15%. Right? So you're not going to make a lot of money for the amount of effort that you have to put in. What you would get is volume. Once you're able to build that readership, that fan base, you'd be able to sell loads of books. Of the more successful authors, typically their first print run is a little higher than 1 million books, which is like really insane. That's the kind of payoff at the end of the day if you do decide to stay put in the market. And like I said before, that there are authors who have been dominating the bestseller list for decades. Of course, they are all traditionally published authors, but nothing prevents newer writing talent to go ahead and replace them. Reason that I wanted to talk to why you should look at the Indian market. List here, and this is the Amazon bestseller list on 6th of January, so about a week prior. Number 7, Daisy by Norman Lewis. Again, English language, remember what I said in terms of trend. Robin Sharma, Who Will Cry When You Die? Napoleon Hill, right? Very familiar names, familiar titles. Here is when these books were published, right? So a book which is in the bestseller list in India in 2017 was actually, the paperback edition in India was published in June 2011. For the past 5.5 years, this book has been dominating the bestseller list, right? Great book, I'm sure. I've not read it. I have read Robin Sharma's books though. 14 years this person, or 13.5 years, this person's books have been on the bestseller list. Essentially, the publisher is milking the backlist. They're using the bestseller tag and the brand of the author to go ahead and offer the books. And by the way, these books are priced really, really low. 87 rupees is about $1.20. 96 rupees is $1.30. Okay. What this is doing, in my opinion, and this is something that really disturbs me and sometimes irritates me, newer talent is not getting exposure in the Indian market. I was really surprised 2 years ago to find one book of an author like a Hugh Harvey. It was a print wool at an airport kiosk in New Delhi airport, and we all know how expensive books are in airport kiosks, right? Stranglehold sort of that has happened in the Indian market. We really need new, very exciting titles which are actually targeted to the readers, and that's how they would start reading newer books. And I'm not saying that they are not, but again, if you were to look at this list a year from now, the bestseller list, it's not going to change a lot
Is this
because it has not changed.
Is this because these books are all run through traditionally published businesses and these aren't self-published authors? Is that why?
No, Jim. I think I would say it's a coincidence that these are all traditionally published books. I'll tell you what has happened. So there are 2 or 3 large, very large booksellers in India. You Read and a couple of other people. So these are like massive size book distributors. Something like an Ingram, let's say, right? They have set up their web stores on Amazon and they discount very heavily these books.
So they're going for the volume by heavily discounting and distributing. So it's not the publisher, it's the distributor who's upsetting the system. I get it. Okay. So it's very hard for a self-published author to break through because of this massive discounting, because of the distributors and what they're doing. So I understand. Okay.
Yes. But Jim, the point is that the discounting is not going to go on forever. We've already seen that happening in case of electronic goods and mobile phones in particular. I mean, they are the largest selling categories on either Amazon or Flipkart. Think of books is going to end, sooner than later. Question is, what happens once they at the fair market price? We can compete with them, but it's going to take us some time to ramp up our presence as well, right?
Yeah. Very good.
All right. So if this was not reason enough, think this particular gentleman. Whenever I talk about an author trying to establish a foothold, I always think of David Hasselhoff. Probably in the US, but he certainly was a rock star in Germany, right? For a variety of reasons. So maybe one of you, or maybe more than one of you, could become the David Hasselhoff of India. So, do go ahead and hope that I have explained what are some of the risks, what are some of the costs, and what are some of the opportunities. If there are any further questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. This is in more than one Indian language. That's Hindi, Dhanyavad, right there. That's Punjabi, and that's Gujarati, and so on and so forth. I just thought that I would give you an idea about what the script looks like because I've spoken so much about translation in local languages. This is how you can reach her at amarvyas.in, and My Kitab podcast is at www.mykitab.in.
Well, this has been amazing, and I really thank you so much for coming on and talking about this, because this is something that authors really need to consider. I do see your next entrepreneurial venture, because I know right now somebody watched this and they're like, can I just hire Amar to guide me through this? And that's exactly the question I'm going to get asked. So if I was you, I'd put together some type of consulting package or solution package that somebody who wants to get involved in this, either that or partner up with somebody who you can do it. Because I see from an outside perspective, if I'm a full-time author, I probably don't have time to do all of these things, to explore this, to figure this whole thing out. And I'm going to be looking for somebody reputable. And you are obviously a reputable person. What I worry about is people getting matched up with somebody who may not be in their best interest. So if you ever do have recommendations for somebody that people can contact in terms of wanting to help them set this up, I think that would be very helpful. Or you should do it yourself and make a lot of money. But in a general sense, this has been really amazing and enlightening for me, and I hope so for this audience as well. This is a huge market. This is something that every author needs to consider, and I took so many things away from this. But the biggest thing I think I took away from this was that this is a long-term solution. If you could get a foothold into this market, this is something that you could build income from for a really long time. So I really appreciate you taking us through this. What else? Where else? I mean, they can go to your list of your podcast. There's your email address. Is there anything else that people can do to help support you? Because you did this out of the kindness of your heart. Is there anything people can do to help you out?
I think if they come and give a listen to the podcast, that would be a great starting point, Jim. I would certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, go to the podcast, listen to it. Email Amar. Definitely, Amar, you have amazing information. You've done a wonderful job putting this together. I love contacting with people like you and having experiences with people like you who have such a great niche and who have done really well to put together that information that helps people, because that's what this is all about. It's about helping people discover new markets, discovering new ways to market their books. And I'm glad to connect with people like you. And if I ever do get a chance to come out there, I would love to meet with you and talk to you some more about this stuff. So thank you so much for doing this again.
No, thanks, Jim. And before we part, this is the resource list that I was talking about. So it's a short a list of websites and some other information that I talked about. And I'm actually now working on a sort of an ebook, and this should be available by this weekend. So if they go to MyKitab website, sign up for the newsletter, they would get a copy of the extended version of this, that how to publish and market your books in India. But this 2-pager right now, it's for for all the listeners who are patiently me speaking.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad we had you on early because, like you said, we contacted about a year ago. I gave you some advice on the podcast. Look how successful you are now. You're becoming one of the biggest experts in the industry, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to come down at some point where you're going to be too big for us down the road. You're going to be such a big hot shot in the space that we're not going to be able to even get you to respond to calls. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this for us.
I hope one of the two happens, but the thing that will never happen is me not responding to calls, Jim. But with that, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you again, and we're going to let you go. Everybody, please head on over to Amar's website, check out his podcast, also contact him. And again, I want to thank him for putting this together for us for our Author Marketing Club Masterclass. It has been very enlightening, and I hope more people take advantage of the India market. All right, let's wrap it up. Have a great book selling year, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time. I'm Jim Kukro from Author Marketing Club. This has been an Author Marketing Club Masterclass, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.